So let's continue with our analysis on the constitutional court bid by some opposition parties and interested parties to hold President Cyril Ramaphosa accountable for load shedding. Legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala joins us now to talk about this. So you have heard some of what General Ramaphosa was saying, or at least all of it, and some of what the president is also arguing. So basically what I was trying to ask him is the whole interpretation of the role of a national, provincial, local government, as the president also seems to be outlining it. He says the Constitution does not compel him to go down and tell local government what to do if it's not keeping up its end of the bargain, as much as he says he cannot be held personally liable for load shedding. And we'll get to the issue of the ministers, which General Ramaphosa was speaking about in just a moment. But if you could just share your views on this train of thought.
Now, let's separate it into two parts. Let's start with the role and responsibilities of each of the entities, whether it's your national, provincial, and even local government. So the president is quite correct in terms of saying, yes, I'm not responsible for the generation or making sure that electricity is being provided in line with what the Schedule 4 of our Constitution actually says. However, what the president is missing is that his role and responsibilities comes with the monitoring and evaluating whether those particular services, as designated by Schedule 4, perfectly put or placed within municipalities, is actually providing the work that it is able to do. Or is the machinery or the systems and the policies that we have, including our national and local legislation, equipped enough to make sure that we're able to receive the services that we ought to receive? So he's the ultimate accounting officer when it comes to making sure that every single department in South Africa is working optimally. In the same breath in which when everything is hunky-dory, we'll say, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. When things are not going okay, we must again come back to him and say, Mr. President, you're not providing your roles and responsibilities in terms of this particular act. Now, let's boil it down to the legal principles that actually force the president to make sure that he's able to perform the monitoring and evaluation processes that are required from him. Let's start with the oath. It's very clear when he takes the oath of office that I'm going to do all that I can as Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa to make sure that South Africa is able to work optimally. I think there are 4 or 5 points that are stated there, perfectly detailing the type of responsibilities in which the president ought to do. But to drill down to the administrative areas in which then the president ought to monitor and make sure that the various ministers are actually doing their job, you simply have to look at Section 85(2) of the Constitution, which is very clear that as the president, working together with the ministers, the Constitution says that, it says, Mr. President, you with the ministers are supposed to work together. You're supposed to coordinate the functioning of the state and to make sure that the administrative is working optimally. Now, if anything fails with the state, we go back to the ultimate accounting officer, which is the president, and say to him, Mr. President, what intervention have you provided? What solutions have you provided? What type of actions have you taken which are positive to make sure that those departments which are perfectly placed within municipalities are able to work in an optimal manner? If you haven't done anything, then we must say to you, Mr. President, you have failed to positively act in your duties and you've not attended to your duties as prescribed by the Constitution.
So the president says, and I continue with what General Ramaphosa was suggesting, that the ministers themselves have usurped the duties and powers of the accounting officer. So President Ramaphosa says the applicants cannot sustain their claim that rights promised in the Bill of Rights were violated on an ongoing basis. He says that Section 152 of the Constitution qualified that municipalities must strive to achieve their obligations within their financial and administrative capacity. But he says, but we also know that the applicants have asked the courts for a declaratory order that Ramaphosa, Eskom, Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan, Mineral Resources and Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe, and the state as a whole have contravened their obligation to protect, respect, and promote the rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights. So, is there a lack of prescription in what should happen in case some of these demands or rights are not met? Is there too much room for interpretation?
I think there is too much room for interpretation. But what it then does is that Once you receive an attack, let's not even call it an attack, an inquiry of saying, what have you done to make sure that you're able to deal with the issue of load shedding? The response from all those individuals that you have named should be, let me give you a 10-point, 15-point, or a point-by-point basis of the type of activities that we've engaged. We've declared a national state of disaster, proving that we do understand the type of situation that you are faced with, and this is the type of intervention that you've provided. We have fired the board. We have rehired the board. The individuals that we have hired within the ESCOM board have the various capabilities to make sure that they're able to provide the intellect and knowledge which is required. Just look at the executive. Let us look at how we're working with law enforcement agencies. Let us look at how we are working with the municipality. So it then calls upon the individuals that you have named to go on a case-by-case basis or point-by-point basis, perfectly detailing the type of intervention that they've done, so that at the end of the day, they'll come back and say, we have explained above the type of interventions that we've conducted. We've done everything which is humanly possible to try and deal with the situation. Anything else which is beyond what we've stated here and the results that are herein are results of things which are beyond our control. However, we are still going to try and continue with these type of processes. We are not throwing in the towel as yet. Just allow or give us time to enable us to be able to move and solve the issue of ESCOM as it is found. So it is not prudent for the president to simply say, I'm going to hide behind the legal semantics of saying that the Constitution does not say that it's my responsibility. No, it doesn't say that. Okay. Or it shouldn't be like that. The president should go further and say, let me provide a detailed explanation as to what we have done thus far.
Mpumelelo, the relief that is being sought by the applicants, the president says that it is not practical. He says also the court is not competent because the applicants are asking the Minister of Public Enterprises also to tell municipalities to shield certain groups from load shedding, and by law he cannot do that. It would mean that dictating to another sphere of government that there is no legal basis for the minister to do so. Your thoughts on this? Does it mean what the parties are asking for, that government must, in the plan that they're being ordered to table, that they need to identify anybody who would benefit from this interim interdict?
It's a valid point from the side of the president, because whenever you go to court, you must be able to receive results which are practical and results that can be done. Now, the courts are going to be very wary in dictating or playing a discretionary role when it comes to certain entities, especially when it comes to government. So the court is not going to issue instructions that are prescriptive or taking away the discretionary powers of the entities that they do exist, or the litigants. So in this case, you may find a change or an amendment in the type of order that can be reached at the end of the day if it goes by way of which the parties are not going to find each other and there's no mediation in the matter. So the court will then say, the best thing that we can do is take it back to government, take it back to ESCOM and say to them, please provide us with a detailed plan as to how we are going to solve the ESCOM issue or the rolling blackouts issue. And then on that, we can then assess whether those particular things or the things that you have promised are being followed to the T. It is very rare where you will find a court of law saying that we are going to take away your discretionary powers, we are going to prescribe as to how you're supposed to conduct the manner of rendering those particular services.
As always, thank you for your time and insights, legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala, speaking to us about this constitutional court bid to not only end load shedding, but to hold the president responsible.